The grand ballroom was filled with laughter, crystal chandeliers dripping gold, and the faint music of a piano in the corner. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of caviar and champagne. But near the door, unnoticed and unwanted, stood a little girl with messy hair, barefoot, her tiny hands clutching her empty stomach. She whispered to the guard, "Please, just a piece of bread. I'm hungry." The guard shoved her back. The crowd sneered. And then one man, the billionaire hosting the gala, leaned forward, smirked, and said, "No food here comes for free. If you can't play the piano, you don't eat tonight." The guests erupted in cruel laughter. They thought it was a joke, until the girl slowly walked toward the piano. What happened next would silence the entire room forever. The night was loud with wealth. Golden chandeliers sparkled above the ballroom. Diamonds, silk dresses, polished shoes, everything spoke of power. Henry Caldwell, one of the wealthiest men in New York, raised his glass of wine and boomed in laughter as his friends cheered his every word. "Tonight," he announced, "we celebrate success. Only the best deserve to be here, and the best always win." Applause followed. No one disagreed with Henry. He was a man people either envied, feared, or pretended to love. But outside those shining doors, the world was different. Cold streets, dark alleys, and the forgotten faces of the city's homeless. And one of them, a small girl named Lily, had wandered too close. She was no older than 12. Her dress was torn, her hair tangled, her lips pale from hunger. For 2 days she had eaten nothing but a bruised apple she found in the trash. Still, she carried something in her heart no one could see: music. When the security guard pushed her away from the warm light of the ballroom, she whispered, "I just need food, please." But the guard's eyes were stone. "Not here, kid. This is a party for people who matter." Her stomach growled, and her legs trembled. Just then, fate turned. Henry Caldwell himself spotted the scene. "What's this?" he barked, his voice cutting through the music. The guests turned to see. A hush fell as Lily stood frozen at the door, her big brown eyes shining with fear and hope. "A beggar," the guard said. Henry's lips curled into a mocking smile. "A beggar? At my gala? Now that's entertainment." Some guests chuckled. Others whispered cruelly. Henry walked closer, his diamond cufflinks gleaming. He leaned down so his eyes met Lily's. "You want food? You think you can just walk in here and take from those who earned it?" I'm just hungry," Lily whispered. The room laughed louder. Henry raised his hand to silence them. Then he pointed to the grand piano, sitting near the stage. Its polished surface gleamed under the chandelier. "Here's the deal," Henry said with a grin. "No one eats here for free. If you can play that piano, play something worth listening to, you get food. If not, you leave, empty-handed." The laughter exploded like fireworks. Some even clapped at the game. Lily's heart raced. She stared at the piano. She had never touched one like that before. But deep inside, her fingers remembered every melody she had taught herself by watching from outside a music store window. The crowd waited, expecting her to run. But instead, she walked. Barefoot, shaking, she climbed onto the piano bench. The room grew silent in mock anticipation. Henry smirked, ready to laugh at her failure. Her tiny hands hovered over the keys. She closed her eyes. And then music, not random noise, not clumsy notes, but a soft, haunting melody that cut to the arrogance in the air. The ballroom froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses stopped midway to lips. Even Henry's smile faded. The girl played with a passion that none of them had ever heard before. Notes rising and falling like waves, sorrow and hope colliding in every chord. It wasn't polished perfection. It was raw. It was real. It was her soul poured into sound. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Some wiped tears they didn't expect. Henry stared, his jaw tight. He had asked for entertainment. But what he got was something else. A reminder that talent, beauty, and greatness could exist in places he never looked. The song ended. Silence filled the room. And then applause. Not polite clapping. Not forced. But thunderous, unstoppable applause. Lily opened her eyes, confused. For the first time in years, people weren't laughing at her. They were cheering. But Henry Caldwell? He didn't clap. His eyes narrowed. Something in him was unsettled, because in that moment he realized he hadn't humiliated a hungry girl. He had discovered something rare, something money couldn't buy. And for a man like Henry, that was dangerous. The thunder of applause still echoed across the golden ballroom. Guests were on their feet, some wiping their eyes, others whispering to each other in disbelief. But on the piano bench, Lily sat frozen, her chest rising and falling, her small hands trembling. She hadn't expected the claps. She hadn't expected respect. She looked toward the long table, where Henry Caldwell sat. Everyone else was on their feet, but not him. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes locked on her like a hawk circling prey. Slowly, he raised a single hand and tapped the table twice. The applause died instantly. Silence fell once more. "Impressive," Henry said at last, his voice low, smooth, but carrying a strange edge. "I'll admit, I didn't see that coming." Lily's lips parted. She thought he might offer her food. Instead, he stood and walked toward her. The crowd parted for him, their whispers like tiny knives cutting the silence. "You played well," Henry continued, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. "But tell me, was it skill or was it luck?" The guest chuckled nervously. I just played what I know," Lily whispered. Henry tilted his head. "What you know? A street child. Playing like that? You expect me to believe you taught yourself." Her cheeks flushed. "Yes, sir. I used to listen outside a music shop. I remember the notes." A ripple of shock spread across the guests. Some gasped, others scoffed. Henry circled the piano like a predator. "So you're saying without lessons, without a teacher, you managed to play like this?" "Yes." The word was quiet but firm. Henry's smile returned, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp. "Then prove it. Again." The crowd leaned forward. Lily swallowed hard. Her hands hovered above the keys. She closed her eyes, searching within herself for another melody, and she played. This time, the music was faster, stormy, urgent, like thunder rolling across the sky. Her small fingers moved with impossible speed, weaving a sound so powerful it sent shivers down spines. Gasps filled the room. A woman clutched her pearls. A man whispered, "That's genius." But Henry? He didn't clap. He leaned closer, eyes narrowed, watching every detail as if looking for a flaw. When the last note rang out, silence fell again. Then the applause roared even louder than before. Guests shouted over each other. Where did she come from? "She's a prodigy." "Henry, you discovered something incredible." For a moment, the billionaire's jaw clenched. His plan to humiliate her had backfired. Instead, she had stolen the night. But then he smiled. A different smile. Calculating. "Very well," Henry said, raising his glass. "This girl has earned a seat at our table. Tonight she eats." The crowd erupted in cheers. Waiters rushed forward, placing silver trays filled with food before Lily. Plates of roasted chicken, golden bread, and fruit glistening with sugar. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. She hadn't seen this much food in her life. But just as she reached for a piece of bread, Henry's hand stopped her. His voice was soft, but only she could hear it. "Remember, little one," he whispered, "nothing in this world is free. Not even applause. Not even food." Lily froze, the bread inches from her lips. The billionaire leaned back and clinked his glass, returning to his guests. "To surprises," he announced. The crowd cheered again, but Lily's hand shook. She realized a man who had given her food was not her savior. He was testing her. And in Henry Caldwell's world, every gift had a price. The night at Caldwell's mansion stretched on. Music resumed, glasses clinked, and laughter returned. But everyone's eyes kept drifting toward the barefoot girl at the table. The girl who had just stolen the spotlight from billionaires and celebrities alike. Lily ate slowly, her small hands trembling as she picked pieces of bread. Every bite tasted unreal, almost like a dream. For the first time in days, her stomach no longer screamed. Yet her heart wouldn't calm, because across the room, Henry Caldwell watched her. Not like a man admiring talent, but like a hunter eyeing prey. He finally rose from his chair, adjusted his cufflinks, and gestured for the music to stop. Once again, silence spread like wildfire. "Ladies and gentlemen," Henry announced, "what we've witnessed tonight is remarkable. A child with no lessons, no training, yet capable of performing like the great masters. She is proof that genius can come from anywhere, even the streets." A murmur of agreement swept through the guests. Some even clapped. But Henry continued, his tone sharpening. "Raw talent is nothing without discipline, without guidance, without ownership." Lily's fork froze midair. Henry stepped closer to her. "This girl, Lily, doesn't belong on the streets anymore. She belongs here in my world. Under my care, she will be trained, molded, perfected. And one day, she will thank me." The crowd erupted in cheers. To them, it sounded like charity, like kindness. But to Lily, his words felt like chains. She whispered, I never said I wanted." Henry's eyes narrowed. He bent down, his voice a hiss only she could hear. "Careful, little one. You think you have a choice? That applause you heard, it wasn't for you. It was because I allowed it. Without me, you're nothing but a hungry beggar again." Lily's stomach turned. Fear tightened her chest. One of the guests, a kind-looking older woman with silver hair, suddenly spoke. "Mr. Caldwell, forgive me, but perhaps the girl should decide for herself." The room fell silent. Eyes darted between the woman and Henry. No one usually dared challenge him. Henry smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore. She will have her say." He turned back to Lily. "Tell them, child, do you want to return to the streets? Cold, hungry, forgotten? Or will you accept my offer? Live in comfort, play for audiences, and never starve again?" The question pierced her like a blade. Around her, the guests leaned forward, waiting. Her heart screamed for freedom, but her empty stomach remembered the nights of pain. Slowly she whispered, "I don't want to go back to the streets." The crowd applauded. Henry raised his glass in victory. But deep inside, Lily knew this wasn't rescue. This was captivity dressed as kindness. As the applause echoed, Henry leaned close once more and whispered words that made her blood run cold. "Good, because from tonight on, little prodigy, you belong to me." The ballroom celebration ended late into the night. Guests departed in shining cars, whispering about the miracle child who had stunned them all. Some thought Henry Caldwell a hero for rescuing her. Others wondered what he truly wanted. Lily was led away from the grand hall by a maid, her stomach still full yet her heart heavy. Every step echoed with the weight of Henry's words. "You belong to me." The maid brought her to a guest suite bigger than any place Lily had ever seen. Silk sheets, velvet curtains, golden lamps. A feast of fruit and pastries sat on the table. To any child, it would have felt like paradise. But to Lily, it felt like a cage. She touched the soft bed, then pulled her hands back, afraid she'd ruin it. In the corner stood a gleaming piano. Her chest tightened, an invitation and a trap. Suddenly a knock. The door opened and Mrs. Whitmore, the silver-haired woman from earlier, stepped inside. Her eyes were kind but troubled. "Child," she whispered, closing the door behind her, "do you understand what just happened?" Lily lowered her head. He said, "I belong to him." Mrs. Whitmore knelt, taking Lily's hands gently. "Henry Caldwell doesn't rescue people. He collects them. Like art, like property. He will use your talent for his empire, for his pride. And once he owns you, he will never let you go." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "But if I leave, I'll starve again. I don't want to go back to the streets." The woman's voice softened. "There are other ways, my dear. People in this city who would help you, not trap you. But you must be careful. Henry is powerful, and he does not forgive betrayal." Before Lily could reply, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mrs. Whitmore quickly pressed something small into Lily's palm, a folded card. "Hide this," she whispered urgently. "When you're ready, use it. Don't let him see." The door swung open. Henry Caldwell himself stood there, his presence filling the room. His smile was sharp, practiced. "Ah, Mrs. Whitmore," he said smoothly. "Visiting our little prodigy already?" The woman rose slowly, masking her defiance with politeness, simply ensuring she was comfortable. "Henry." Henry's eyes flickered to Lily, then back to Mrs. Whitmore. "She will be in time. Now, if you don't mind." Mrs. Whitmore gave Lily one last look, a silent warning, before slipping out of the room. Henry stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His smile faded. "You played beautifully tonight. But understand, Lily, talent without loyalty is dangerous. You're under my roof now. Everything you eat, everything you touch, even the air you breathe, comes from me. Remember that." He leaned closer, his voice a whisper sharp as glass. "And if you ever think of running, know this. I always find what belongs to me." Lily's hand tightened around the hidden card. Her heart pounded. She didn't know yet what the card said, but she knew one thing. If she stayed, her soul would be trapped forever. And for the first time in her young life, she understood survival wasn't just about food. It was about freedom. The next morning, golden sunlight spilled into the suite where Lily had spent her first night in luxury. The piano gleamed beside the window, waiting for her touch. But instead of joy, she felt a knot in her stomach. Henry's voice still haunted her. "You belong to me." Her fingers clenched around the card Mrs. Whitmore had slipped into her palm. She finally opened it. A simple message, handwritten. "If you want freedom, come to 12th Street tomorrow midnight. W." Lily's heart pounded. It was a way out. A chance. But fear whispered, "What if Henry catches you?" Hours later, Henry himself arrived with two men in dark suits. He spoke smoothly, as if kindness dripped from his words. "Today your training begins, Lily. You'll practice for 6 hours daily. Soon, the world will know your name. Under me, of course." The men wheeled in sheet music, metronomes, and recording equipment. It was clear this wasn't freedom. This was ownership. Lily sat at the piano, hands trembling. Henry leaned close, whispering, "Play Little Prodigy. Remember, if you falter, you lose everything." She pressed the keys, her music filling the room. But inside, her heart screamed for escape. That night, when the mansion finally grew quiet, Lily slipped from her bed. She held the card close and tiptoed to the window. Her small hands pushed it open, and with silent courage, she climbed down into the night. The city streets were cold, but they smelled of freedom. She ran barefoot until she reached the address. On 12th Street, under the dim glow of a lamp, Mrs. Whitmore stood waiting. Her face softened with relief when she saw Lily. "You came," she whispered, wrapping a coat around the shivering girl. "Good. You're safe now. I'll take you somewhere he can't touch you." But before they could leave, headlights blazed. A black car screeched to a halt. Henry Caldwell stepped out, his figure tall and menacing against the night. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Did you really think you could run, Lily? I told you, I always find what belongs to me." Lily's knees weakened. Mrs. Whitmore gripped her hand tightly. "No, Henry. She doesn't belong to you. She belongs to herself." Henry's eyes narrowed. For the first time, his control cracked. The child he thought he owned was defying him. Lily's voice, though shaky, found its strength. "You said I was nothing without you. But you're wrong. My music doesn't come from you. It comes from me." Her words hung in the night like a final note of defiance. Henry's jaw clenched, but he could see it in her eyes. The girl he tried to break was unbreakable. Police sirens wailed in the distance, summoned by Mrs. Whitmore's allies. Henry's men tensed, but the billionaire raised his hand, signaling retreat. His glare burned into Lily as he stepped back into the car. "This isn't over," he growled, before the car vanished into the darkness. Lily collapsed into Mrs. Whitmore's arms, tears falling, but this time not from fear, from relief. The city light shimmered as a new dawn approached. For the first time in her life, Lily was free, not just from hunger, but from chains. And as the world would soon learn, the homeless girl mocked by a billionaire was no beggar. She was a prodigy, and her story was only just beginning.